I need to say this up front. It wasn't supposed to be serious. I was venting. I was overwhelmed. I was feeling insecure at yet another family dinner where every aunt, cousin, and grandmother seemed to find a way to compare me to the perfect ex who apparently walked on water and cured diseases in his spare time. So I snapped. I said the sentence that would end up detonating my entire marriage. Your family probably likes my ex more than they like me. I swear I didn't know my husband would take that as a challenge. I didn't know he was about to prove me right in a way I would never, ever forget. I didn't know that one frustrated comment would lead to the most humiliating evening of my entire life. But that's exactly what happened. And now I'm sitting in a hotel room trying to piece together how expressing a legitimate concern turned into a nightmare that cost me everything. Before we get into this mess, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Now let's dive in. Let me give you the context, because this didn't come out of nowhere. This was years in the making. Years of small cuts that eventually bled me dry. When I first started dating my husband, let's call him Ryan, I knew he'd had a serious relationship before me. Her name was Claire. They dated for 3 years during college and into their early 20s. They broke up about 8 months before Ryan and I met. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone has exes. Everyone has a past. I certainly did, but what I didn't realize was that Claire had somehow managed to weave herself so deeply into Ryan's family that breaking up with him hadn't meant breaking up with them. The first time I noticed something was off was at our 6-month anniversary dinner with his parents. We were looking through old photo albums because his mother insisted on showing me baby Ryan pictures. Cute, right? Except mixed in with all the childhood photos were pictures from the past few years. Pictures of family vacations, holiday gatherings, birthday parties, and Claire was in half of them, not just in them, prominently featured, sitting next to Ryan's mother at Christmas dinner, laughing with his sister at a wedding, standing in the middle of the family photo at someone's graduation. "Oh, that's Claire," his mother said fondly when I pointed at one particular photo. "She always loved our family trips to the lake house. Such a sweet girl." Present tense. Loved, not loves. Ryan shifted uncomfortably but didn't say anything. I tried to brush it off. They'd dated for 3 years. Of course she'd been part of family events. Of course there would be photos. It didn't mean anything, except it did mean something, because it kept happening. At Thanksgiving dinner that first year, Ryan's aunt asked him, "How's Claire doing? I saw on social media she started a new job." Ryan's aunt was following his ex on social media, actively keeping up with her life, and asking about her at a family dinner where I, his current partner, was sitting right there. "I wouldn't know," Ryan said tersely. "We're not together anymore." "Oh, I know," his aunt said, waving her hand dismissively. "But you two are still friends, aren't you? She was always so good for you." I felt my face burn. I wanted to say something, but what could I say? Stop following your nephew's ex on social media? That would make me sound jealous and controlling, which is exactly what I was starting to feel, but I didn't want to show it. Ryan grabbed my hand under the table, which I appreciated, but he still didn't actually say anything to defend me or shut down the comparison. At Christmas, his grandmother gave him a gift and said, "Claire would have loved this. Remember how much she enjoyed that trip to the museum?" At Easter, his cousin mentioned how Claire used to make the best deviled eggs and asked if I'd be making any. I hadn't even known I was in competition with Claire's deviled eggs. Every single family gathering became a minefield. Someone would inevitably mention Claire, compare me to Claire, ask about Claire, reminisce about Claire, and Ryan's family still followed her on every social media platform. I know because I checked. His mother commented on Claire's posts regularly. Heart emojis on her vacation photos, congratulations on her achievements, miss you on her birthday. His mother was basically maintaining a relationship with his ex while I was right there, trying to become part of the family. I brought it up to Ryan multiple times. "Your family still talks about Claire constantly," I said, after one particularly painful dinner where his sister had literally said, "Remember when Claire organized that surprise party? That was so thoughtful. She was always so organized." "They're just making conversation," Ryan said, not looking up from his phone. "It's not just conversation," I insisted. "It's constant comparisons. It's like they wish you were still with her." "You're being paranoid," he said. "They like you. They're just used to Claire being around." "It's been 2 years since we started dating," I said, my voice rising. "At what point do they get used to me being around?" "They will," he said vaguely. "Just give it time." But time didn't help. If anything, it got worse. Because then the invitation started. I found out through Ryan's sister's social media post that Claire had been invited to his cousin's wedding. Not as a +1, as a separate, individual guest, because she was part of the family. I wasn't even engaged to Ryan yet, and his ex was getting wedding invitations to family events. "Did you know about this?" I asked Ryan, showing him the post. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Yeah, I heard something about it." "And you didn't think to mention it to me?" "I didn't think it was a big deal," he said defensively. "She's friends with my cousin. It's his wedding. He can invite whoever he wants." "She's your ex," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice level. "And your family is inviting her to events. Don't you see how that makes me feel?" "You're making this about you when it's not about you," he said, and that sentence made me want to scream. How was it not about me? How was my partner's family maintaining close relationships with his ex not about me? But I swallowed my anger and tried to be understanding. I tried to be the cool, unbothered partner who didn't get jealous or insecure. I went to that wedding, I smiled and made small talk, and I watched Claire chat comfortably with every member of Ryan's family while I stood awkwardly by the bar, feeling like an outsider at my own boyfriend's family event. The final straw, the thing that led to the comment that destroyed everything, happened 3 weeks before the dinner. I was at Ryan's parents' house, helping his mother prepare for a family birthday party. I went to the kitchen to grab something from the fridge, and there it was. A photo of Claire, on the refrigerator, held up by a magnet. Not an old photo that had been there for years. A recent photo. Claire at some event, smiling at the camera, looking radiant and successful and perfect. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling something cold and heavy settle in my chest. His mother walked in and saw me looking at it. "Oh, that's from Claire's graduation," she said cheerfully. "She just got her master's degree. We're so proud of her." We're so proud of her. Not Claire got her degree. Not Ryan's ex accomplished something. We're proud of her. Like she was still part of the family. Like she still belonged. I said nothing. I just turned away and went back to setting the table, my hands shaking. That night, I told Ryan about the photo. "There's a recent picture of Claire on your mother's fridge," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Okay," he said, like he didn't understand why that would bother me. "Doesn't that seem weird to you?" I asked. "Your mother has a current photo of your ex on her refrigerator, while we're dating, while I'm trying to be part of your family." "My mom likes Claire," he said simply. "They were close. Just because we broke up doesn't mean my family has to cut ties with her." "I'm not asking them to cut ties," I said, feeling my frustration building. "I'm asking them to acknowledge that I exist, to make me feel welcome instead of constantly comparing me to someone who isn't even part of your life anymore." "Claire is part of my life," he said, and my heart stopped. "What?" "I mean, she's part of my family's life," he corrected quickly. "We're still friendly. We text occasionally. There's no reason to make things weird just because you're insecure." Insecure. He called me insecure for having feelings about his family's ongoing relationship with his ex. I didn't bring it up again after that. I decided to just endure it, to be the bigger person, to prove that I could handle it. But I couldn't handle it. Not really. Every family dinner felt like torture. Every mention of Claire's name felt like a small wound. Every comparison felt like proof that I would never measure up. And that's the state I was in when we went to that dinner. The dinner where everything fell apart. It was a regular Sunday family dinner at Ryan's parents' house. Nothing special, just the usual gathering with his parents, his sister and her husband, and his grandmother. I'd been quiet most of the evening, just trying to get through it without incident, smiling politely, answering questions when asked, trying to be pleasant and agreeable. Then Ryan's grandmother started talking about some charity event she'd attended. It was wonderful, she said. Claire was there, actually. She looked absolutely beautiful. She's doing such important work with that nonprofit. We had a lovely conversation. I felt my jaw tighten. Of course Claire was there. Of course she looked beautiful. Of course she was doing important work. She asked about you, Ryan, his grandmother continued. She always asks about you. Such a kind soul. I looked at Ryan, waiting for him to say something, anything, to acknowledge that this was inappropriate, that talking about his ex at a family dinner with his current partner present was uncomfortable. But he just nodded politely and said, "That's nice. That's nice." That was his entire response. His mother chimed in. "I saw her post about that project she's working on. So impressive. Remember when she organized that fundraiser for the animal shelter? She raised thousands of dollars. She's always been so driven," his sister added, "and so creative. Remember those centerpieces she made for Mum's birthday? They were gorgeous." They were all talking about Claire, like she was a beloved family member who'd moved away. Like they missed her. Like they wished she was there instead of me. And I felt something inside me snap. I'd been holding it in for years. Years of comparisons. Years of feeling inferior. Years of being made to feel like a replacement for someone better. I'd tried to be understanding. I'd tried to be mature. I'd tried to be the bigger person. But I was done. "You know what?" I said, my voice cutting through the conversation. Everyone turned to look at me. "I have a legitimate question." Ryan's eyes widened slightly. He could hear the edge in my voice. "Do you all realize how inappropriate this is?" I continued, my voice getting louder. "Sitting here, talking about Ryan's ex like she's some saint, while I'm right here trying to be part of this family." "We're just making conversation," his mother said, looking taken aback. "You're not making conversation," I said, standing up from the table. "You're worshipping someone who isn't even here. You follow her online. You invite her to family events. You have her picture on your refrigerator. You talk about her constantly. And you act like I'm crazy for being bothered by it." "Now, that's not fair," his father started, but I cut him off. "What's not fair is being compared to someone for years and being told I'm overreacting." My voice was shaking now. "What's not fair is trying to build a relationship with a family that clearly wishes I was someone else." I turned to Ryan, who was sitting there with a carefully neutral expression. "And you," I said, pointing at him, "you let this happen. You've let them treat me like a consolation prize for 3 years. You've never once stood up for me. You've never once told them to stop bringing her up. You just sit there and let them make me feel like I'm not good enough." "You're being dramatic," Ryan said quietly, which was exactly the wrong thing to say. "I'm being dramatic?" I repeated, my voice rising to a pitch I barely recognized. "Your family probably likes my ex more than they like me, and I'm being dramatic." The words came out before I could stop them. Loud, clear, dripping with all the resentment and pain I'd been holding in. The table went silent. Ryan's face changed. The careful neutrality disappeared, replaced by something cold and hard. His grandmother looked shocked. His mother's mouth was hanging open. His sister was staring at me like I'd just committed an unforgivable offense. And Ryan just stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt, calculation. "Is that what you really think?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said, doubling down because I was too far gone to back down now. Yes, that's what I think, because that's how they make me feel. Every single time we're here. He nodded slowly, like he'd just made a decision. Okay, he said simply. Let's find out. I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. He stood up from the table. We should go, he said to me. Thank you for dinner. His voice was eerily calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. We drove home in complete silence. I kept waiting for him to yell at me, to tell me I'd embarrassed him, to accuse me of ruining dinner. But he said nothing. Just drove, his hands gripping the steering wheel, his jaw clenched. When we got home, he finally spoke. If you really believe that, he said, his voice flat and emotionless, let's see if you're right. I thought he was being sarcastic. I thought he was going to sleep on the couch or give me the silent treatment. I didn't realize he was making a plan. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Ryan's voice coming from the kitchen. He was on the phone with someone, and his tone was friendly, almost cheerful. Warm in a way it hadn't been with me in days. That should have been my first warning sign. Ryan wasn't a morning person. He definitely wasn't a cheerful morning person. He usually grunted through breakfast and didn't become fully human until after his second cup of coffee. But that morning, he sounded energized, engaged, almost excited. I got out of bed and walked quietly toward the kitchen, trying to hear who he was talking to, trying to understand what had put that tone in his voice. Yeah, I know it's been a while, he was saying, and there was a smile in his voice. I could hear it even though I couldn't see his face. I actually wanted to reach out because I think it would be good for everyone. My family really misses you. They ask about you all the time. My stomach dropped. Who was he talking to? Who did his family miss? Sunday dinner at my parents' place, he continued casually, like he was inviting an old friend over for a casual meal. Just like old times. I think my mom would really love to see you. She's been saying she wishes we could all get together again. There was a pause while the person on the other end responded. I held my breath, pressing myself against the wall, straining to hear. Perfect, Ryan said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. A cold smile, a calculated smile. A smile that had nothing to do with happiness and everything to do with strategy. See you at 6. I'll text you the address, though I'm sure you remember it. He ended the call and I stood there in the hallway, my heart pounding, my mind racing. Who was that? Who remembers his parents' address? Who has his family been asking about? I walked into the kitchen, trying to keep my face neutral, even though panic was clawing at my chest. Who was that? I asked, even though some part of me already knew. Some part of me had recognized the pattern of the conversation. He looked at me with that same cold expression from last night, the expression that made him look like a stranger, like someone I didn't know at all. Claire, he said simply, watching my face for a reaction. I invited her to Sunday dinner. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. The room started to spin. You what? You said my family likes her more than they like you, he said, his voice perfectly level, perfectly calm, like we were discussing something mundane like grocery shopping. I figured we should test that theory. See how right you were. See if your accusation has any merit. That's insane, I said, my voice rising with every word. You can't invite your ex to family dinner just to prove a point. That's cruel. That's manipulative. Why not? He asked, tilting his head like he genuinely didn't understand my objection. If you're wrong, then you have nothing to worry about. My family will treat you the same way they treat her, and you'll see that you've been imagining things. If you're right, then you get to be proven correct. Either way, we'll know the truth. Isn't that what you wanted? The truth? Ryan, this is crazy, I said, feeling panic rising in my chest like floodwater. You can't do this, please don't do this. I can, he said calmly. And I am. Dinner's at 6 on Sunday. You can come or not, your choice. Then he walked past me, grabbed his keys from the counter, and left for work without another word, without kissing me goodbye, without even looking back. I stood there in the kitchen, my hands shaking, trying to process what had just happened. He'd invited Claire, his ex, to family dinner, to prove that his family liked her more than me. And the worst part was, I knew exactly how it was going to go. The next few days were torture. Pure, unfiltered torture. Ryan barely spoke to me. When he did, he was polite but distant, like I was a stranger he was forced to coexist with. I tried to talk to him, tried to get him to cancel, tried to make him see how cruel this was. "Please don't do this," I begged on Wednesday night. "Please. I'm sorry for what I said. I was hurt and I lashed out, but I didn't mean for it to go this far." "You meant it enough to say it in front of my entire family," he said without looking up from his laptop. "I was frustrated," I said. "I've been feeling invisible for years and I finally cracked. But that doesn't mean you should humiliate me like this." "I'm not humiliating you," he said calmly. "I'm giving you what you wanted, proof, validation, the truth." "The truth is that you're being vindictive," I said, feeling tears prick my eyes. He finally looked at me then. "The truth is that you accused my family of liking my ex more than you, and instead of apologizing or trying to work on your insecurity, you're acting like I'm the villain for taking you at your word." "You're twisting this," I said desperately. "I'm clarifying it," he corrected. "You made an accusation. Now we're going to see if it's true." I couldn't sleep that week. I barely ate. I kept imagining how Sunday would go, how Claire would walk in and everyone would light up, how they'd hug her and fuss over her and make her feel like she'd never left, how they'd barely acknowledge me. I thought about not going, just refusing to participate in this nightmare, but that felt like admitting defeat, like proving that I was too weak to face the truth. So on Sunday, I got dressed. I put on makeup to hide how exhausted I looked. I practiced keeping my face neutral, and I went to what I knew would be the worst evening of my life. We arrived at his parents' house at 5:45. Ryan had driven us in silence, like we were attending a funeral instead of a family dinner. My hands were shaking as we walked up to the front door. Ryan opened it without knocking, like always. And there she was. Claire was already there, already inside, already comfortable. She was sitting on the living room couch, laughing at something Ryan's father had said. She looked exactly like her photos. Tall, elegant, perfectly styled. The kind of woman who belonged in magazine spreads and charity galas. When we walked in, everyone turned. Ryan's mother's face lit up, actually lit up, like Christmas morning, like someone had just told her she'd won the lottery. "Claire!" she exclaimed, standing up so quickly she nearly knocked over her wine glass. She rushed over to hug her. Not to hug me, even though I was standing right there. To hug Claire. I stood there in the doorway, frozen, watching my mother-in-law embrace my partner's ex with genuine warmth and affection. The kind of hug you give someone you've desperately missed. The kind of hug that lasts several seconds too long to be polite. "It's so good to see you," his mother gushed, pulling back to look at Claire's face, her hand still on Claire's shoulders. "It's been far too long. You look absolutely beautiful. Doesn't she look beautiful, everyone?" There was a chorus of agreement from around the room. "You too, Mrs. Morrison," Claire said warmly, and I noticed she called her Mrs. Morrison, not by her first name like I did. So respectful, so proper, so perfect. Ryan's father stood and shook her hand enthusiastically. "Welcome back, Claire. We've missed having you around here. The house hasn't been the same without you." His sister came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, and actually squealed when she saw Claire. Squealed like a teenager seeing her favorite celebrity. "Oh my gosh, Claire, I saw your post about your promotion. Congratulations. That's so amazing. You must be so proud." "Thank you," Claire said modestly. "It's been a lot of work, but I'm excited about the new challenges." One by one, every member of Ryan's family greeted Claire with enthusiasm and genuine happiness. They asked her questions. They touched her arm. They smiled at her like she was the sun breaking through clouds. No one greeted me. No one said hello. No one acknowledged that I'd walked in the door. I stood there, invisible, while they all fawned over the woman my partner had invited specifically to humiliate me. Ryan watched the whole thing with that same cold expression, testing his hypothesis, gathering data. Finally, his mother seemed to remember I existed. "Oh, hi," she said to me, her voice noticeably cooler than it had been with Claire. "You can put your purse in the hall closet." That was it. That was my greeting, an instruction about where to put my belongings. Claire looked at me then, and I saw something flicker across her face. Confusion, discomfort, maybe a hint of smugness. "Hi," she said awkwardly. "I'm Claire. I don't think we've met." We hadn't met, because she'd been replaced before I came along, but she knew exactly who I was. Ryan must have told her on the phone. "I know who you are," I said, my voice tight. The room went quiet for a moment, tense, uncomfortable. Then Ryan's mother jumped in with forced cheerfulness. "Well, let's all sit down. Dinner's almost ready." We moved to the dining room, and I watched in horror as Claire was seated in the place of honor, right next to Ryan's mother. The seat I usually sat in when it was just family. I was placed at the end of the table, between Ryan's father and his grandmother. Physically separated from Ryan, who sat across from Claire. This was already worse than I'd imagined. Dinner started, and it was immediately clear that I'd been right about everything. Ryan's family couldn't stop talking to Claire. "So tell us everything," his mother said eagerly. "How's the new job? How's the apartment? Are you seeing anyone?" Claire smiled modestly. "The job's great. Challenging but rewarding. The apartment's small, but it's in a good neighborhood. And, no, not seeing anyone seriously at the moment. Too focused on my career." "Always so driven," his sister said admiringly. "That's what I always loved about you." Loved, present tense. "How have you been?" his grandmother asked Claire warmly. "We miss seeing you at these dinners." "I've missed them too," Claire said, and she actually sounded sincere. "This family always felt like home to me. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest." The conversation continued, and it was like I wasn't even there. They asked Claire about her work, her hobbies, her friends, her life. They laughed at her stories. They congratulated her on her achievements. They asked follow-up questions that showed they'd been keeping up with her life online. Meanwhile, no one asked me a single question. No one acknowledged my presence. No one seemed to care that I was sitting there watching my worst fears come to life. Ryan said nothing. He just ate his food and watched, his expression unreadable. Then came the killing blow. Ryan's mother was reminiscing about some family trip they'd taken to the mountains a few years ago. A trip that apparently Claire had been part of. "Remember how you organized all the activities?" his mother said to Claire. "You planned everything perfectly. The hikes, the meals, the games. It was the best trip we ever took." "It was fun," Claire agreed, smiling at the memory. "We should do another trip like that," his sister suggested. "Claire, you should come. You made it so special last time." "That would be lovely," Claire said. And then his mother said it. The words that shattered whatever was left of my dignity. "You know," she said, looking at Claire with obvious affection, "we always hoped you and Ryan would work things out. You two are so perfect together. You just fit with this family in a way that felt right." The table went silent. I felt the blood drain from my face. I felt my hands go numb. I felt the room start to spin. She'd said it. Out loud, in front of me. She'd admitted that she wished Ryan was still with Claire instead of with me. I looked at Ryan's father. He was nodding slightly, like he agreed. I looked at his sister. She was looking at Claire with a sad, wistful expression. I looked at his grandmother. She was smiling at Claire like she was a granddaughter she'd lost. They all agreed. They all wished Ryan was still with Claire. And Ryan sat there, his face completely blank, letting it happen. He'd orchestrated this. He'd invited her here knowing exactly what would happen, knowing his family would choose her, knowing they'd make their preference clear. He'd proven me right. Completely, devastatingly right. But being right didn't feel like victory. It felt like drowning. I stood up from the table abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking. "I need some air." I walked outside to the front porch, trying to breathe, trying not to have a complete breakdown in front of everyone. A few minutes later, Ryan came outside. I turned to him, tears streaming down my face. "Are you happy now?" I asked. "Is this what you wanted? To prove that I was right? To humiliate me?" He looked at me with those cold, emotionless eyes. "You said my family liked her more than you," he said quietly. "I gave you a chance to see if that was true." "And?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "And you were right," he said simply. "Congratulations." He walked past me to his car and opened the trunk. He pulled out a small overnight bag. My overnight bag, the one I use for weekend trips. He'd packed it. He'd planned this entire thing, including my exit. "What is that?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Your things," he said, handing me the bag. "I think you should stay somewhere else tonight. Give us both some space." "You're kicking me out?" I asked in disbelief. "I'm giving you what you wanted," he said. "You wanted proof that my family prefers Claire. You got it. Now you can go process that however you need to." "This is insane," I said, my voice rising. "You invited your ex to dinner just to prove a point, and now you're kicking me out." "I'm not kicking you out," he said calmly. "I'm suggesting that you might want to stay somewhere else while you think about whether you want to be with someone whose family will never accept you the way you want them to." The words hit like a slap. "You're twisting this," I said desperately. "You're making this my fault when you're the one who set this up." "I set it up," he agreed. "But you created the situation. You spent years resenting my family. You finally said what you really thought, and now you're upset that I proved you right." He gestured to the car. "Get in. I'll drive you to a hotel." "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said, my voice shaking with rage and heartbreak. "Fine," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He handed me several bills. "For a car service and a room. Text me when you're ready to talk like adults." Then he turned and walked back into the house. Back to his family. Back to Claire, leaving me standing on the porch with an overnight bag and the ruins of my relationship. I heard laughter from inside. Claire's voice, saying something charming. His mother's delighted response. They didn't need me. They didn't want me. They had exactly who they wanted. And my partner had just proven it beyond any doubt. I'm writing this from a hotel room 3 days later, the kind of generic chain hotel that you forget as soon as you leave it. The kind of place with thin walls and scratchy sheets and a view of a parking lot. Ryan has texted me twice. Both messages were short and businesslike. "Hope you're okay. Let me know when you want to talk." I haven't responded. I don't know what to say. What is there to say after what happened? Because here's the thing I keep coming back to. I was right. Everything I accused his family of was true. They do like Claire more than me. They do wish Ryan was still with her. They have been making me feel like an inferior replacement for years. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't insecure. I wasn't imagining things. But being right doesn't change anything. It doesn't fix anything. It just makes everything worse. I keep replaying that dinner in my head. It's like a horror movie on loop, showing me every devastating moment. The way his mother's face lit up when she saw Claire. Not politely pleased, genuinely delighted. The way she said, "It's so good to see you," with real emotion in her voice. She'd never greeted me like that. Not once in 3 years. The way everyone talked to Claire with genuine interest, asking about her job, her life, following up on things they knew because they'd been keeping track. Meanwhile, I sat there in silence. No one asked me anything. And that moment when his mother said they'd always hoped Ryan and Claire would work things out, said it out loud, in front of me. The worst part was seeing everyone nod in agreement. Not one person objected. I was the wrong choice. Claire was the right one. And they'd never accepted the substitution, and Ryan orchestrated the entire thing. The way he called Claire that morning, the way he set up the dinner, knowing exactly how it would go, the way he sat there watching it unfold with that cold expression. Was he trying to show me the truth, or was he trying to punish me? I think it was both. I think he wanted to prove his point while making me suffer for embarrassing him. I've been going over our relationship, trying to figure out if there were warning signs. And there were. The way he'd dismiss my concerns. You're being paranoid. You're being dramatic. The way he'd defend his family instead of setting boundaries. They don't mean anything by it. He never validated my feelings, never acknowledged that his family's behavior was inappropriate. Instead, he made me feel crazy for noticing, and when I finally cracked and said something undeniable, he didn't comfort me. He punished me, deliberately, cruelly. I think about what I could have done differently. I could have kept my mouth shut, could have swallowed the comparisons one more time, could have continued being the understanding partner, but I couldn't anymore. Years of feeling inferior had built up. Eventually, something had to give, and when it gave, he made me pay for it. Not just by proving me right, but by doing it in the most humiliating way possible. The cruelty of it takes my breath away, the level of calculation it took, the deliberate choice to hurt me in the deepest way possible. He could have just talked to me. Instead, he chose devastation. He chose to prove a point at the expense of my dignity. And that tells me something important about who he is. He's someone who weaponizes vulnerability, someone who would rather win than heal. Some people might say he was justified, that I made an accusation and he simply tested it, that he gave me exactly what I asked for, proof. But there's a difference between proving someone right and weaponizing the truth to hurt them. He knew how that dinner would go. He knew his family would choose Claire. He knew I would be humiliated. And he did it anyway, because I hurt his pride, because I called out his family in front of them, because I made him look bad, so he made sure I knew, definitively and publicly, that I would never measure up to the woman who came before me. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if we're broken up or just taking space. I don't know if this is fixable or if it's already over. What I do know is that I can't unsee what I saw. I can't unhear what his mother said. I can't pretend that his family will ever accept me the way they accept Claire. And I can't forget that my partner, the man I thought I'd build a life with, chose to humiliate me instead of defending me. Maybe I was wrong to say what I said at that dinner. Maybe I should have handled my feelings differently. But I wasn't wrong about the truth of it, and now I have to live with being proven right in the most painful way possible.